This is the Hunting Creek Nymph. I will explain the materials as I go. I've got a size 10 standard Nymph hook in here right now. We'll start it off with about 10 wraps of 0.015 lead wire. You could go a little bit thicker if you wanted, or a few more wraps if you really want some weight. 0.020 would be fine on here. But this, I've found, seems to work just fine. We'll use 8/0 black thread. Go ahead and build a, maybe get that a little bit closer to the front, just maybe 2 or 3 eye widths back. Put a little dam just right behind it. Go right back up to the front. Lock it in right there, and just a couple of wraps over that right there. Take a thread back to about the barb at the start of the hook right here. Now for the tail of this guy, we've got, it is raccoon tail. The tail is the tail of the raccoon. You know, you've got the brown and black stripes of the raccoon tail. So about a hook gap long, not too bushy, just a fairly sparse tail right here. Stuff is slippery, so you might need to do a pinch wrap or two and then take a look and see if that's where you want it. That's pretty good right there. So we'll lock it in with a couple more wraps. Touch and turns up here until you get to your weighted wraps. Go ahead and trim this off. Now next up we've got, I'm using copper wire, size small. Now for a size 10 you could just easily go up a size to brassie, but I tie these in a lot of 12 and 14s, and this size works just fine. So get that locked in on the underside or toward the back. Now next up we have some dubbing. Now I use rabbit dubbing on this one. You can use anything. You could use synthetic. Superfine would work just as well. But you don't want it to be too buggy. That's not part of the fly. So put a little bit of wax on there. Black dubbing right here. See, that's rabbit. And you'll want the dubbing pretty thin loop. Just put you a noodle right here. We'll take it up to a little more than halfway of the body. So let's take that to the back right there. You can see it got one guard hair sticking out right there. That's fine. We can trim that or ignore it if you want, whatever. But the purpose of this body, it's not to be a buggy body. So a little bit of taper, that looks fine right there. You could go a little further if you want, but we'll leave that where it is. Now go ahead and counter wrap your wire rib. Not too close together, just evenly spaced wraps. You'll probably get 4 or 5 on a size 10 here. And go ahead and lock this in. You could either spin that off. It's pretty thin stuff. I'll just cut it. Just watch your end there. Make sure you don't have anything too sharp to cut your thread. Now this is the hotspot. So the red hotspot, I'm using just a duck quill, dyed red. You could use anything you want here, any color you want. I think the red works just a little bit better. I've tied them in pink and olive and even natural. That's fine too. So let's get that a couple turns before we lock it in and take a look at where we got it. This will sometimes split on you, but you want it to be pretty much on the top in the center. So that looks close enough. Now, how far back do you want to go? A little further than I have right there, just because the more you go back, the longer of a wing case you'll have. Now you could either cut these ends off or just bury them in your thread right here. I'm just going to bury them. So next up is some Peacock Herl. Now when I'm tying nymphs, anytime I can use Peacock Herl, I will. This stuff just seems to work great. So I've got 4 strands here. I snip off the first couple of inches of the brittle stuff, then go ahead and get that caught in, pull it up a little bit, and let's see, we'll take it back here to the back of our wing case and just get all that in there. I'm going to go ahead and put a 1/2 hitch just to hold my thread in place. Now either use your Hackle pliers or just spin it. I'm just spinning this with my fingers. We'll wrap it around. It's not a real thick thorax, but it's pretty good size. It'll give it that metallic green sheen on the underside of it. 4 or 5 turns, maybe 6 if you can get them before you catch this in. Now go ahead and lock that in before you snip it off. Usually with I can get a couple of flies out of those 4 strands of Peacock Herl. So now next up, we just fold the wing case over and tie this in. One thing to note here, have your thread hanging where you want the front of it to be. So I backed it up a couple of thread widths there. Now just gently take your time here, fold this over. Try to make sure you're on the center there. Now these will split on you, that's fine. Now let's get a couple of wraps here. Take a look at it, make sure you're centered well enough. Yeah, it looks fine. So let's go ahead and lock that in. Bring these up. I'll put a couple of wraps under it right here. And maybe one more back on top before I snip this duck quill. Almost done. Only one more piece to it. Now that's just small soft hackle. Hen soft hackle. You could use brown, dun, black. I've got a speckled dun colored here. Now it's not a very long feather. You're not going to get too many wraps, but that's fine. You don't want to. You're tying these and we'll push them down to the side as they're going to be legs. So be careful with this, and this will pull out on you. So I pull the stem back and get a couple more wraps on top of it just to get it really locked in here. Now we can snip this stem off. That shouldn't come out when we wrap it. Now I suppose if you're good enough you could probably wrap this with your fingers, but there's not a whole lot to grab on, so I usually use the hackle pliers here. Then just wrap this like you do any soft hackle. We might get 2 wraps out of it. Probably just 1.5 is about, and that would be enough. You don't want it to be too buggy. So we'll go ahead and tie this off right here. Try not to capture any of the fibers when you get these first 2 wraps in here. It's okay if you do. You can just move them back when you're making your head. So we got 2 wraps in there right now. Now before we really lock it down, what you want to do is take a look at this. It's pretty buggy looking right now. You don't want the legs all askew coming all over the place. So just try to divide them up on the top, then push them off to either side. And hold them back. We might trim some of the ones on the bottom, or we might just leave them. We'll see how it looks when we get there. So get those legs where you want them, and let's just build our head. So you got a little scraggly sticking out right here. We can either trim that or just not worry about it. We'll go ahead and try to trim it. Okay. So if your thread starts unwinding on you, just give it a clockwise spin here. Now, do I have my legs to the side? For the most part, yeah, I'm happy enough with that. You might have one right here you want to pull out or snip. So okay, now we just really need to wrap up the head. A little bit of cement, whip finish, we'll call it done. I don't like these little feathers on the bottom right there, but that's fine. So what I'll do oftentimes before whip finish, I'm going to put some head cement on it, so 3-return whip finish with a little bit of wax on it should suffice just fine. Go ahead and trim that off. Now before we do the head, is that too many legs on the bottom? No, I don't think so. I like it like that. You've got them mostly, for the most part, they're off to the side, none sticking out the top, and a few coming out the bottom. So standard head cement. I like this UV resin right here. I think this works pretty well, and put a light on it and it dries in about 10 or 15 seconds. So that has been my go-to for finishing my heads on these. Just take your bodkin, wrap it around, make sure you get all your thread wraps covered. Doesn't take a big drop to get them all on here. That looks good enough. Put your light on it for about 10 or 15 seconds. Give it a little spin. There you go. The Hunting Creek Nymph, named after Big Hunting Creek in the Catoctin State Forest or State Park in middle central Maryland, out near Camp David. So a little bit of history is that's the stream Jimmy Carter used to fly fish in. So pretty neat place if you're ever out in central Maryland. There you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.